Okay, I just want to do a quick update on the Charlie Gard case. I found this document by the Telegraph, very good little article. Um, give the props to Nicola Harley. I quite like this one. It's pretty detailed, really. So I want to hopefully play this clip.
I wrote a letter to the Pope.
And he responded?
Potentially. I didn't get a reply, but then there was a tweet, so, yeah.
And was it similar with Donald Trump? Was it a letter
No,
that
I
you
didn't
wrote?
write a letter to him, no.
He just contacted
you?
you?
I think he's seen our story and...
And how does that feel when you hear someone like that, incredibly powerful man, or the Pope, who of course is hugely important to billions of people around the world, to know that they're on your side and they're trying to offer some hope?
Yeah, no, it does give us hope, yeah, definitely, because there was no hope left anymore. There's now 5 doctors who agree with us. 2 of them are in England, 1 is in Spain, 1 is in Italy, and 1 is in America. And they all specialise in this particular, in this particular disease, among others, but, the rare forms. There's another girl who's, 24-hour ventilator, same as Charlie, and 1 year later she's riding a bike.
So look...
So, and just acting completely normal lives.
And that's that hope that you are clinging.
Yeah.
You're desperate to have the opportunity to offer Charlie as well.
I've heard other people say, if it was 1 in 10,000, I would try it. So it's a 1 in 10 chance, and in some sense that people may say that's a small chance, but when it comes to medicine, that's quite a big chance. I've taught myself this very, very complicated condition, and I've spoke to experts all over the world, and the fact that we've now got 5 doctors who agree with us, not this lone voice, and the judge said it had a 0% chance of working and it was futile, but it's not the case.
So, scrolling down this article, I got to the lovely timeline. Now, if you do recall from my previous Charlie video, I was given an example of how the court systems go, up and down the hierarchy of government courts. And in here, this lovely little timeline actually gives an idea of what court she's been to. And I did hint that it would be the family court, and it appears that's what's happened. But more importantly, I'll let you read through this in your own time. But the things that I picked up, so Great Ormond Street, where is it, the managers? Yeah, bosses, it says here. 3rd of March this year, the Great Ormond Street bosses asked Mr. Justice Francis to rule that life support treatment should stop. So there's your intent. Now the thing is, these bosses is a nothing, bosses at the what? But I don't know, let's say Peter Smith is a boss, and Jill Jones is another boss. They've had a meeting at their position at the head of the Great Ormond Street. And for some reason, they've decided, for whatever reasons, which is undoubtedly economic reasons, that they need to expedite this, as the prospects for this little one is pretty slim, which is fair enough. I can't disagree with that. But obviously, they have a budget to keep, and I don't know how much life support costs, but presumably it costs a shed ton of money. So they've obviously instigated the court case to get a ruling to say that they can switch off the life support, which is fantastic. So it says here that they've gone to the family division of the High Court. Now, whether this started in family court initially and then went up, I don't know. But so the family court. Now, family court is a very interesting creation. And if you ever find yourself in family court, I would always say try your best to get out of family court. Unless you like being in family court for whatever reason. So, and that also went up to the High Court. So I don't know if it started in the family court, but it's obviously gone to the family division of the High Court. Okay. And then, this is the big thing here, the appeal. Now, when you appeal something, you this is what I've been told by a friend, and I hasten to pass it on to you to just take this on board, is when you appeal something, you actually give credence or acknowledgement or validity, if you like, whatever word you want to use. Basically, you agree with this. In order to appeal it, you have to agree with this. Otherwise, there'd be nothing to appeal. So by appealing, that is true. This becomes true. And then they take it to the Court of Appeal. Now, when you go to the Court of Appeal, the appeal judges will basically look at what's happened. And mostly, they'll look to ensure that processes have been followed accurately. So, and there's not been like some sort of technical difficulty or a technical irregularity in their own system. And that's basically how that works. So, of course, when you go to a Court of Appeal, You may win, you may not lose, you may not win, but in this case, obviously, it was not successful, and they lost their court at the Supreme Court. Now, Supreme Court is the former House of Lords until Tony Blair came in and destroyed it, and its judicial oversight in these kind of cases has been changed somewhat. Obviously, because the names change, but also the people who are in that building are no longer there in any great force. Then they took it up to the European Court of Human Rights. And this is where things got a bit interesting. It basically didn't work either there. Refused to intervene. I don't know what that means. So anyway, that's basically the end of the road in terms of government courts, as I explained in my previous video. But I was just quite happy to see that it was a family court division. So yeah, I'm sure speak to anyone you know who's ever been involved with the family court and try and get them to say something positive that came from it. I mean, it can be positive to one party, it's normally incredibly detrimental to the other, or both, in some cases. Thankfully, this case has gone back to the High Court for whatever reason. They do have these chambers, brick court chambers, barrister. They've even got a Rothschild in with this barrister's chambers. Yeah, the thing is, if you accept representation with this, and you basically you're handing over, like in America they call them attorneys, okay? An attorney has a duty to go through the whole court case from beginning to end. Now in England we don't have attorneys, we have solicitors, and apparently the difference is that solicitors don't have to go through from beginning to end. You know, they don't have such an obligation. But when you instruct a barrister to act on your behalf, then you're basically playing in their game. You're asking for an actor to act in the government courts on your behalf. So not only are you credence to the appeal by doing an appeal, but now you're full-blown involved with this whole procedure, and you know you're not going to get the results that you want. It's basically capitalization on your lack of knowledge of how you or who you are. I mean, it's not for anyone to tell you who you are or what your standing is, but you know, when you've got a little baby, you know, if you start calling them the words like child, children, parent, start getting represented in their world, and you ask for the big daddy family court division to come in and act as mummy and daddy, that's what they're doing. They're acting as mummy and daddy. And you've been invited in and you've accepted the invitation. It's a process, yeah? You're never ever going to get justice as you believe you should in someone else's court, especially in the government court. So, I just wanted to highlight that fact. But thankfully, the weekend's passed. The baby hasn't been killed. Because that's another thing I wanted to bear in mind is, okay, you've got a court order to turn off life support, which is okay, fine, let's say that was legitimate. But then someone has to go up to this little baby and turn the plug off or unplug him. Yeah, who can do that? That's unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't do that. Who can? I mean, the doctor's just going to go up and say, yeah, well, I've got an order, I've been told, and switch it off. Really? Really, doctor? You think you can do that? That's what I put on the Twitter. I said, look, that might be completely and utterly legal, but to assist in the death of a fellow human being, that's not necessarily a lawful act, just because you've got a legal order. It's like Nuremberg trials, if anyone remembers those things. I'm sure you don't. But many people who were involved with the killing of the Jews, yeah, they were saying, well, I was just doing my job. I was just driving the truck to the camps. I was just loading the people onto the trains. I was just, I didn't kill anyone. Oh, really? You didn't kill anyone? You didn't know where those trucks went. You didn't know what was happening to those people. And a lot of the people at the Nuremberg trials, who are just small players, small little order followers, good little civil servants, they were found to have a hand in the deaths of many people, and they were hanged. They were hanged in Nuremberg. Many people were hanged. So to look at your medical profession, and this is where economics should never meet healthcare, and that's why the NHS is such a good national tool to ensure that morality should always be the overriding objective and not financial constraints. Whereas you have to go up to, I mean, could you just imagine going up to all and switching the plug off? And saying, sorry, that's all I can do now. Time's up, the meter's empty. You got to, wait for this poor baby to die and move on your way. I mean, it's just madness. The practicalities of doing it. But what I'm worried about is that some silly little nurse will just think, oh well, my manager's told me to go in and switch this off, and if I don't do it, I'll lose my job. And people need to understand is, if anyone gives you an unlawful order to end life, you never follow that order. And then if you lose your job because of it, by all means, send me an email. But yeah, this is where your own conscience has to step in. You have to know the difference between right and wrong. And by all means, if anyone gets ordered to turn this baby's life support machine off, then I would only urge them to think twice and to try and do the right thing and not do that. So one final point for the video is the bosses that were mentioned in the Telegraph article. This is the man I've come across, Dr. Peter Steer, who's the CEO of Great Ormond Street Hospital. And he's made a comment here, which is quite an interesting one. It doesn't seem to mention patients or children. It's priorities for the organisation. There's also another little comment down here. Great Ormond Street Hospital study highlights untapped potential of newborn organ donation in the UK. That was a little bit worrying to read that on the page where this chap comes up. But this is where the Independent identified this man as the bosses have instigated the legal proceedings. But ultimately, the CEO, all these legal people take direction from the governors of the hospital, and this is the governor in question, Dr. Peter Steer. So it's under his instruction that the court cases would have gone ahead. Whether or not he knows about that, then that's something to take up with him. But that's basically where the direction comes from.